God.
Family.
Family. Survival.
Survival. Big Cat just wanted us to pay a little visit.
Leave him alone!
Nice to speak to you. Can you hear me okay?
Good to see you, my brother.
I'm good, thank you. So, congratulations on the movie. It's, I loved it. I watched it again yesterday just to refresh my memory, but it's great.
Awesome.
I mean, it's got kind of a typical action tropes in there, but it's very different, especially the kind of, it brings in religion, which is something that I don't think I've ever seen actually in that kind of an action movie before. That is quite, I mean, with there being a lot of religious people out there, I mean, that's kind of quite a precarious job to take on, no? Because you've got to be, on the one side, you've got to be careful, you've got to be respectful to religion. On the other side, you've also not got to be too kind of preachy to people that are not really interested in that kind of a movie, no? So that must have been quite a risk when you kind of read the script. What was it about the script that you realized that you could take that on, and it kind of was just the right balance between those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I will say when we read this Jonathan Easley script, it felt very natural, very organic to the characters and the landscape. So for us, it was just hand in hand, right? I mean, a lot of these folks are out there, you know, the church is a redemption process for these characters. And so that is part of that arc for them.
And obviously, I think it's in the Bible. There's all sorts of stories of revenge and, you know, using the Lord's name to invoke your revenge. And there was definitely cause in this film, you know. You definitely get to a point, there's a breaking point where you get to see sort of his church and state and revenge all sort of come together, which, you know, I mean, for storytelling, it was nicely woven in. You know, you sort of get the church vibe. Obviously he's going to church, it's part of their mantra, it's part of their family / hunting mantra. And then it was nicely worked in, you know, at the end of the story when the preacher sort of comes in and spoiler alert, comes in and starts to be a lot more proactive, let's just say.
Yeah, but I think it's part of you know, Garrett's character and Cash's character, like their rehabilitation out of the life, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they have that moral existential crisis when they're being drawn back into the life.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's like one of the characters, I don't want to give anything away, but one of the characters, one of the protagonists, he's kind of struggling with his life, and he's got addiction problems, alcohol problems. That kind of was carefully balanced as well with the religion as well. It's kind of like a religion kind of redeems things that you're having troubles with. Was that difficult to kind of find a right balance as well, especially with that specific character, Scott?
I will say, interestingly enough, you know, I do have a friend or two that have done like the 12-step program.
Mhm.
And they definitely, you know, they lean.
It gives them the strength.
Yeah.
Right. It gives them a moral balance and a compass with which they can direct themselves.
And I think in a positive way, it gives them something to latch onto and obsess about and, you know, lean on in a time, in those rough times. Right. So for me, just kind of knowing that, reading the script and having that be peppered throughout and interwoven, it felt really natural. You know, it felt really nice. I thought it felt wonderful.
And, you know, Cash was formerly living the life. He had, you know, he was indulging in substances, and he's rehabilitated himself through his belief and his faith. And you have Finney's character, who is having a bit of an existential crisis, right? He hasn't come back yet, so he's resisting that and fighting it, and feels like he's been abandoned.
And hopefully, you know, you believe he's at least, I think by the end of the film there, or at least the end of his trajectory, you start to feel that at least he's gone back to church with his daughter. He's talking to the pastor again. You know, you can see that he's at least sort of halting the drinking. You know, that he's at least headed in a good direction, even though he's not, you know, full send yet.
And one last thing I'd like to say is, like, I've always found it interesting that you will see hardened criminals, right, out living the life with crosses hanging around their necks, tattooed on their bodies. And for me, I've always wondered about that. I'm like, wow, is that like a safety net? Like, they believe, so they know where they're going if they get taken off the planet, but at the same time, you know, they're living a criminal life. I find that really fascinating.
Yeah.
Did you actually speak to any criminals now that you said that? Did you actually speak to any criminals or kind of search for anyone that was in that kind of position that really did turn to religion, having lived a life of crime beforehand?
Well, look, you know, and everybody's, I think a lot of people in their personal lives know folks of this nature. We're no exception, right? We hang out with them on the daily and pal around with them, you know, not as much, but and obviously going through Kentucky, you know, you're going to run into all sorts of people in this world. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've absolutely
We've had a certain amount of experience.
conversated
Absolutely.
with them.
Absolutely.
You know, it's what happens in the world, man.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously we cannot speak about Orlando Bloom's character. Obviously he's been in some a couple of action movies quite recently. I've seen him in, which he's great in. But this is kind of, he is an action hero in this movie, but he's also kind of an anti-hero in the same way. Was it specific? Did you actually specifically go out for Orlando for this one, or was that just happenstance that he came to land the role in the end?
But
No, we went after him very specifically. We'd actually met him like 2 or 3 years previous, and just sitting down with the guy and getting to know him a little better. We'd never seen him in a role like this, and it excited us to no end. We were trying to find a project to work on together, and it excited us to no end to think of him in this role because we'd never seen him do anything like this. And thankfully, he responded to it. And yeah, he brought 125% to it. Like, he really went above and beyond to create this character and get the dialect down. And
I was going to say the dialect as well. Yeah.
yeah, and look, we knew in our conversation with him, because look, we talk about the business, but when we sit down with an actor or anybody, we really just want to know who they are as a human. And so we knew he had a penchant for motorcycles. He loved motorcycles. So when we're reading the pages and it's like Cash is zipping around on a dirt bike, and we're like, oh man, like Orlando loves dirt bikes. Like, this could be a really like perfect storm to get him for this. So it seemed like it all aligned, and I think his performance would concur that.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. Someone else who I was surprised, especially towards the end, that I wasn't expecting to see is you've got a young girl who really, I don't want to give too much away, but she really gets down and dirty with the rest of the cast now, which was something that you don't see that often in like this kind of movie either.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like it had to happen that way, that she's the sort of heir apparent of this life. She's the redeeming factor. She's this ultimate savior of the family and the next generation. So for us, it was important that she had a hand in preserving the family's legacy.
And although it is, you know, it's an action film, so I guess we could say, without spoiling anything, there's a bit of a violent ending. But yeah, that violence sort of baptizes her into a rebirth, you know, which we enjoyed about the script as well.
Talking of rebirth, I don't think I've ever seen Andie MacDowell in such a different role. That's fantastic. I don't know. Was she your first choice? Because she's just completely out of a typecast there.
So I would be lying if I would say that she was our first choice, but we made a list and we said, man, Ian was like, Andie MacDowell would be amazing for this. And it was on me. I go, yeah, but she'd never do this. We've never seen her do anything like this. And do we just want to like spin our wheels and wait for her to say no? And then out of left field,
yeah, her agent passed it to her because it was going around the agencies, passed it to her and said, hey, I think you might really like this. And she did. She reached out to us. We got on a Zoom call with her, and she brought a little bit of Big Cat with her into that Zoom call just to show us that she had that kind of edge and flair. And man, we got really excited because, yeah, we'd never seen her do anything like that as well. And it tickled us to no end to think of her doing that role. And man, she really brought it.
No, absolutely. 'Cause I mean, I remember from 4 Weddings and a Funeral, these rom-coms, and to see her as Big Cat taking all these and taking all, it was pretty much everyone was male apart from her in the whole film, though. So it was just like she just dominated everything. It was brilliant. Yeah.
Well, that was one of the fun things, right? I mean, sometimes you put someone in a role that maybe you don't think that caters to them perfectly, but man, she really took to it like a duck in water and just started dominating everybody on screen.
she had those boys falling in line.
Yeah, well, they're giving the wrap in a couple of minutes. So just to finish off, I mean, obviously you've done all kind of different films, you've done comedies and all kinds of different things. Where would you like to go next? A similar direction, action, or something completely different? Because you just like to veer all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, look, we and I love our action thrillers. I think, you know, we've got a hankering to do some sci-fi, maybe a little horror. You know, I think we're definitely going to do some more comedic thrillers and some action films, absolutely. But we're definitely want to branch out coming up.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, congratulations again on the movie. Can't wait for people to see it. And I hope to speak to you again sometime soon.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
All
it.
right. All the very best. Take care. Best of luck.
Make a show of it.
All right, boys. For God. For family. For survival.